Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are doing well. In this video, I'm gonna teach you about the parotid abscess. So, what is parotid abscess? It is basically the collection of or superposition in the parotid space. Now, let me show you first its picture, its clinical picture. Then we'll discuss it further. Here you can see the parotid abscess. The abscess formation or the collection of the pus in the parotid gland. This is the parotid abscess. This is how the parotid abscess looks like. Causes of the parotid abscess, why we have the suppuration or pus formation in the parotid space. It is basically due to dehydration, particularly in the post-surgical cases or in the debilitated patients, in chronically in patients when there is stasis of salivary flow, or it is also due to the infections of the oral cavity. Infections basically from the oral cavity via the Stenson duct. Stenson ducts open to the second upper molar teeth. So the infections from the oral cavity via the Stenson duct may travel in the parotid gland because it has two openings, one in the parotid gland and one in the oral cavity in the second upper molar teeth. So the infections from the oral cavity may also uh, invade the parotid gland, and multiple small abscesses may form in the parenchyma of the parotid gland, and they may coalesce or they may fuse to form a single abscess. So what are the causative organisms? Causative organisms are Staph aureus, Streptococci, anaerobic organisms, and really gram-negative organisms. What are the clinical features? Basically, I have told you earlier that the parotid abscess occurs after the surgeries in post-surgical cases. So usually follows 5 to 7 days after operation. It is basically due to dehydration. Okay, and there is swelling, redness, induration, and tenderness in the parotid area. If you notice, I have shown you the clinical picture of the parotid abscess, and if you examine it, there will be swelling, redness, and induration, tenderness in the parotid area at the angle of the mandible. Okay, parotid abscess is usually unilateral, but bilateral abscess can also occur. Fluctuation is difficult to elicit due to the thick capsule. Very thick capsule, so fluctuation is difficult to elicit. Opening of the Stenson duct become congested. I have told you about the Stenson duct. That it has two openings, one in the parotid gland and one in the oral cavity. So if you apply pressure over the parotid, there will be the exudation of pus from the opening from the oral cavity. You can see patient is toxic, running on high fever and dehydrated, and dehydration is the one of the causes of the formation of the pus in the parotid gland. So how we diagnose the case of the parotid abscess? I have told you the causes of the parotid abscess, that the dehydration in post-surgical cases may be the cause, in the stasis of the salivary flow may be the cause, the infection of the oral cavity may be the cause. So these are the causes. Now after that, I have told you bacteriology, that Staph aureus, Streptococci, and anaerobic organisms causes parotid abscess. What are the clinical features? I have told you that dehydration is the main cause. So dehydration post-surgical cases, usually after 5 to 7 days after operation. And if you examine the parotid gland, there will be swelling, induration, and the redness of the parotid area. And I have told you that if we apply pressure over the parotid, there will be exudation of pus from the Stenson's duct or from the second upper molar teeth. Patient is toxic, running on high fever, and dehydrated. How we diagnose the patient? How we diagnose of the patient can be made by ultrasound or CT scan. More than one loculi of pus, we can see the loculi of pus in the CT. Aspiration of abscess can be done. We culture it for the sensitivity of the causative organism. Obviously, we have to give the antibacterials or antimicrobial agents. So we culture the organism to prescribe the specific antibiotics. Treatment. What is the treatment? First of all, the dehydration is the major cause, so we have to correct the dehydration. We have dental infection is another cause, so we should improve the oral hygiene and promote salivary flow. And we also give intravenous antibiotics. I have told you that the organisms are bacteria, so intravenous antibiotics we give. Surgical drainage, if all these are the conservative treatment. So surgical treatment and medical treatment. So what is the surgical treatment? Surgical treatment is simply the we give the periauricular incision, preauricular incision around the ear, and we go for as in perirectomy, and we drain the pus. Now let me first show you the picture of the Ludwig's angina in the submandibular space. This is basically the submandibular space. Below the mandible, we have submandibular space. This is submandibular gland, and this is submandibular. This is all the submandibular space. I have told you that the mylohyoid muscles divide the submandibular space into two compartments. One is sublingual space and one is submaxillary space. Above the mylohyoid, there is sublingual space, and below the mylohyoid, there is submaxillary space. So, why it is called sublingual space? Because it lies below the tongue, so it is sublingual space, and below the mylohyoid, we have submaxillary space, and infection of all these sublingual space and submaxillary space infection. This is Ludwig's angina. Let me show you. You can see the picture of the clinical picture of the Ludwig's angina, that the patient is having the infection and suppuration in the submandibular space. Here is its mandible, and there is infection of the submandibular space, and this is called the Ludwig's angina in 7 years old child. Shown you the picture of the submandibular space, that the submandibular space, in easy words, it lies below the mandible, and we have mylohyoid muscle which divides the space into the sublingual space and submaxillary space. So submaxillary and submental space and the sublingual space, it is divided by the mylohyoid. I have shown you already. So it's what is its etiology? The collection of the pus in the submandibular space is basically the submandibular abscess, or it is called more commonly as Ludwig's angina. I have shown you its clinical picture and its extent also. So what is its etiology? Cause of the Ludwig's angina, dental infections. They account for 80% of the cases. Roots of the premolars. Basically, we have two spaces. I have told you earlier that there is a sublingual space and there is the submaxillary space below the mylohyoid. So roots of the premolars basically lie at the sublingual space, and the infections from the oral cavity may at the premolar level may spread through the to the sublingual space, while the roots of the molar teeth extend up or below the mylohyoid line and primarily causes submaxillary space infection. So, due to the premolars, we have the infection of the sublingual space, and due to the molar, we have the infection of the submaxillary space. And what is submandibular sialadenitis? Injuries of oral mucosa and fraction of the mandible account for other causes. Suppose we have any injury of the oral mucosa and fracture of the mandible, so there will be pus formation in the submandibular space also in that case. What is bacteriology? It is caused by the alpha hemolytic streptococci, staphylococci, and bacteroids, and Haemophilus influenza, Escherichia coli, and Pseudomonas are also seen. So basically, alpha hemolytic staphylococcus and streptococci are same as in we have seen in parotid abscess also, and rarely Haemophilus influenza, Escherichia coli, and Pseudomonas are also responsible for the formation of the pus in the submandibular space. The symptoms that the patient told you or you suspect in the patient when he is having the Ludwig's angina. So there is marked difficulty. The patient told you that he is having the very marked difficulty in swallowing anything, and he is having trismus. Trismus means that low jaw, that the patient is inability to move the jaw properly, or reduced movement of the jaw or the muscles of mastication. So this is the primary complaint of the patient. When the infection is localized to sublingual space, structures in the floor of the mouth are swollen and tongue seem to push up and back. When there is sublingual space infection, the tongue is pushed backwards, and basically it involves the structures of the floor of the mouth. And when infections spread to submaxillary space, we see that the submental and submandibular lymph nodes are swollen, and when we touch the lymph nodes, submental and submandibular lymph nodes, we touch the lymph nodes, they give a very hard woody feel, and that is indicative that the patient is having the Ludwig's angina. So what is if someone asks you that if the patient is having Ludwig's angina, so how will you tell that the patient is having sublingual infection in the sublingual space, or suppression in the sublingual space, or suppression in the submandibular space? So you say that if the lymph nodes gives in the submental and submandibular region give very hard woody feel, then we conclude that the patient is having the submandibular space infection, and if or submaxillary space infection, or if we examine the oral cavity for all of the mouth is having infection, or the infection of the floor of the mouth and structures, then we suspect that the patient is having sublingual space infection. Further, that what is the treatment of the Ludwig's angina? We give the patient systemic antibiotics in case of Ludwig's angina, and we drain the abscess simply. Intraoral incision is given if the infection is localized to sublingual space, and we give the external incision or the if the infection involves the submaxillary space. And how we give the external incision? This is A transfer incision extending from the angle of the mandible to the other is made with vertical opening of tongue with a blunt hemostat. I will show you the picture of the external incision in case of the Ludwig's angina. This is not important. You just have to remember that intine oral incision is given if the infection is localized to sublingual space, and if the infection involves a medullary space, then we give the transverse excision from the angle of the mandible to the other side with a multiple midline musculature of tongue with a blunt hemostat. And we also perform the tracheostomy of if the airway is injured. What are the complications of the Ludwig's angina? That the infections, in case of submandibular space infection or the Ludwig's angina infection, may spread to the retropharyngeal space or parapharyngeal spaces. I'll discuss with you all these two spaces, that how the infection from other spaces invade the retropharyngeal parapharyngeal space, and there will be airway obstruction also due to laryngeal edema. In case of airway obstruction, we need tracheostomy. So there will be airway obstruction is one of the complications of the Ludwig's angina. And there will be septicemia, and there will be aspiration pneumonia, that the patient may aspire the pus, and that causes aspiration pneumonia. These are the complications of the Ludwig's angina. So moving towards our another topic, that is peritonsillar abscess. What is peritonsillar abscess? Basically, peritonsillar abscess is the around the tonsils. If we have the pus formation, then this is peritonsillar abscess. Let me first show you the clinical picture of it, and then we will discuss it further. Now let me show you the picture of the peritonsillar abscess. This is basically the abscess formation around the tonsillar area. This is the peritonsillar abscess. As you can see here, the uvula is deviated to another side. There will be displaced and inflamed tonsillar pillar. You can see there will be normal interior tonsillar pillar line, and there will be inflamed tonsils with exudative spots. Now let me show you the clinical picture of it. Presentation of the quinsy. As you can see here, the uvula is deviated to one side, and there is the pus over the tonsils. That it means that the patient was having acute follicular tonsillitis earlier, that progresses to the formation of abscess around the tonsillar area, and this is quinsy basically. So the patient was suffering from the acute follicular tonsillitis, that was basically the formation of pus over the tonsils due to the bacterial infection such as streptococcus and staphylococcus. And due to untreated tonsillitis, the patient was having the abscess formation of the tonsillar area, and this is the quinsy, and the marked we can see the marked pus formation, and we can see the deviation of the uvula also. And if it remains untreated, the patient may progress towards the septicemia, endocarditis, etc. To the clinical picture of the peritonsillar abscess. Now moving further, what causes the peritonsillar abscess? If the patient is having acute tonsillitis, if that is untreated, and the patient is having no sore throat, or the acute tonsillitis is remains untreated. First, there is a pus formation in the crypta magna. But what is the crypta magna? Crypta magna basically form the medial wall of the tonsils. If there is pus formation in the medial wall of the tonsils due to bacterial etiology, or the patient is having acute follicular tonsillitis, patient was suffering earlier from acute follicular tonsillitis, then these pus may extend beyond the capsule around the tonsils, and this may cause quinsy, and this is called peritonsillar abscess. Around the tonsil there will be abscess formation. First there is abscess formation in the crypta magna, and then it will expand, the pus expands and invade abscess formation in the crypta magna, and then this pus expands in around the tonsillar area and causes quinsy, which is peritonsillar abscess. So it is written here. What are the clinical features of the peritonsillar abscess? Basically, acute tonsillitis happens in children, so obviously peritonsillar abscess also happens in children more commonly, and usually it is unilateral. Generally, there is septicemia and resembles an acute infection. It is having bacterial etiology, so the patient may develop sepsis or septicemia, and it includes fever, chills, rigors, general malaise, body aches, headache, nausea, and constipation. And what are local symptoms? Local symptoms are these are the systemic symptoms, that the patient is having fever, patient is having constipation, patient is having malaise, body aches. All these are the All these are the signs that the patient is having some bacterial etiology. Obviously, it develops some bacterial etiology, and the patient is having endocarditis also. If the patient remains untreated, he may develop endocarditis in long run. Here it is not written, but it is due to acute follicular tonsillitis, and if it remains untreated, the patient may progress to the sepsis or endocarditis or glomerulonephritis, etc. So, what are the local signs? Local signs are there will be severe pain in the throat, usually unilateral pain. There is marked uh, difficulty in swallowing. That the patient is unable to difficult his or her own saliva, and there the speech will be very muffled and thick. It is the characteristic of the peritonsillar abscess or quinsy that the speech is very thickened and muffled, and this is called hot potato voice. And there will be foul breath due to sepsis in the oral cavity and poor hygiene, and ipsilateral ear because the cranial nerve 9 supplies both the ear and the tonsils, so we have the referred pain is in the ear also. How we examine the peritonsillar, if we suspect the patient is having peritonsillar abscess, or how we examine when we examine what are the findings of that examination. The tonsil pillars and soft palate are congested and swollen, and tonsil itself may not appear enlarged. It is buried in the edematous pillars. The pillars are edematous, so the tonsils may not appear enlarged. Uvula is swollen and edematous and push the opposite side. Uvula push the opposite side is a classical sign of on examination of the quinsy, or bulging of the soft pillar anterior pillar above the anterior pillar above the tonsils. And we also see the mucopus may be seen covering the tonsillar region, as it is having bacterial etiology. There is suppuration, so we see the pus formation and mucus formation over the tonsillar covering the tonsillar region. There will be cervical lymphadenopathy also, and the torticollis patient keep the neck tilted to the side of abscess. What are the investigations? We perform the contrast CT or MRI to show the extent and abscess, to extent of the abscess, to see the extent of the abscess, and we do the needle aspiration of an abscess for the sensitivity and culture of the bacteria. And what is its treatment? The treatment is hospitalization. We give intravenous fluids, we give antibiotics in large doses for both aerobic and anaerobic organism. It is having bacterial etiology, so we give antibiotics to the patient, we give analgesics to the patient for the pain relief. Aspirin is avoided because of the danger of bleeding, because so it is contraindicated. Aspirin is contraindicated. Oral hygiene should be maintained, and the above conservative measure may cure periodontitis, tonsillitis in cases. Now moving forward, if all the medical and conservative treatment fails, then we simply drain the abscess. And how we drain the abscess? The important point here is that site of drainage is just lateral to the junction of vertical line to the anterior pillar and horizontal line to the base of uvula. I'll show you that what does it mean. So where we give incision for the drainage of the peritonsillar abscess, we give the incision at the junction of the horizontal line passing through the base of the uvula. This is uvula, base of the uvula. The horizontal line passes the base of the uvula, and the vertical line passing through the interior pillar of the tonsil. We give the incision here. So this is the incision point in case of the drainage of the peritonsillar abscess. Now, what are the complications? Complications are very rare with the modern therapy, but there may be the parapharyngeal abscess. Basically, peritonsillar abscess has the potential to cause parapharyngeal abscess around the pharynx. Also, I'll show you the I'll show you the pictures in the next videos, upcoming videos, that what is parapharyngeal abscess, what is retropharyngeal abscess, and there will be also edema of the larynx, and in that case tracheostomy is required. There will be septicemia. I have told you earlier, in case of acute follicular tonsillitis, when the patient is having bacterial infection, there will be chance of the sepsis. There will be chance that the patient will end up having endocarditis or glomerulonephritis. So the patient is having septicemia also. There will be pneumonitis or lung abscess due to aspiration of pus. This is aspiration pneumonia, and there will be jugular vein thrombosis and spontaneous hemorrhages from carotid artery jugular vein also. So this is all about today's lecture.